This week on Vaticano, the Holy See and the People's Republic of China sign an agreement on the appointment of bishops. Find out how this agreement can change the life of Catholics there. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. The Holy See and the People's Republic of China have signed an agreement on the appointment of bishops. They signed it on Saturday, September 22nd in Beijing. In a statement, Holy See Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin said that the objective of the Holy See is a pastoral one, to create the conditions for greater freedom, autonomy, and organization for the mission of announcing the gospel.
And today, for the first time, all the bishops in China are in communion with the Bishop of Rome, with the successor of Peter.
The September 22nd agreement put an end to excommunications that started back in 1958 when the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, a year after its foundation, started to consecrate bishops without the approval of the Holy Father. In an interview last year, His Eminence Cardinal Joseph Zen, Emeritus Bishop of Hong Kong, shared his concerns about the upcoming agreement with ytsync-en.
I really don't understand what they are expecting from a bad agreement, because maybe you avoid illegitimate ordination of bishops, but then you agree to have bad bishops. And I really take again this opportunity to invite everybody to be rational, to be calm, and we never criticize the Pope. But I hope the people around the Pope, they stop giving him bad advice, because the Pope really needs to know the reality, and the reality is that there is no freedom. The reality is that we cannot see any goodwill on the part of the Beijing government. They are still controlling the church, and they want to control it even more.
But the Vatican is promoting support for the agreement.
What is required now is unity, is trust, is required a new impetus to have good pastors recognized by the successor of Peter, by the Pope, and by the legitimate civil authorities. And we believe and we hope that the agreement will be an instrument just for these objectives, for these aims, with the collaboration of all.
Coming back from his trip to the Baltic countries, a day after the agreement was signed, Pope Francis commented on the document during the in-flight press conference.
L'accordo l'ho firmato io.
I signed the agreement.
Almeno le lettere.
I signed the plenipotentiary letters. I am the person in charge. The others have been working for more than 10 years. It's not an improvisation. It's a real journey.
È un dialogo.
There is a dialogue on possible candidates, but nominated by Rome, nominated by the Pope. That's clear. And we pray for the suffering of some who don't understand or who have many years of clandestinity behind them.
Di clandestinità.
In recent years, the number of Christians in China has noticeably increased despite restrictions on church activity and attempts to control it by the Chinese government. To understand the nature of the Catholic Church in China better and how this agreement can change life for Catholics there, we caught up with Father Bernardo Cervellera, head of the Asia News Agency that monitors the life of Christians in Africa, Asia, and especially in China. Father Cervellera, thank you so much for joining us. Have you seen this accord?
No, I have not seen it. I think nobody will see it, because the Vatican and the foreign ministry, the Chinese foreign ministry, they said that they will not publish the agreement.
Why do you think that's so?
But that is, from a positive point of view, I think that because it is a provisional agreement, perhaps they want to find, first of all, to verify it, and then they want to arrive to a more stabilized agreement before producing it. perhaps from a more suspecting vision, perhaps they fear the critics of Chinese leadership and of Christians among the Catholics.
The whole deal focuses on bishops and nominations, and going forward, Beijing will nominate and the Pope will have veto powers. How is that going to work in practice? What are your expectations?
Up to now, Beijing wanted to decide independent nomination and independent ordinations. Now it seems that the Pope will have the power to say no. Only I will choose dignified candidates. But we don't know if Beijing will accept the word of the Pope or they will continue to present the same candidate or same not very dignified candidates. In this case, the agreement perhaps can fall.
That's what people are worried about, isn't
Yeah.
it? We don't know what, or perhaps they could then take it out on the underground Catholics. There could be repercussions for those who are still faithful to Rome.
This is another problem. But, the agreement only talks about the nomination of the bishops, means of the official bishops, but doesn't say anything about the underground bishops, if they will be recognized by the government or if they can work freely without belonging to the Patriotic Association.
There are so many questions. You have your finger on the pulse of the underground church in China. What have they been saying to you since the news came out just a couple of days ago of this accord with the Vatican?
But we have received some comments from underground and official Catholics. Let us say that they are, on one hand, they are optimistic because they say that at least there is one small step for the dialogue between China and the Vatican. So something could happen in the future and could be perfectionated in the future. On the other hand, people say, but we fear the government because we don't trust it. We don't trust the government because they persecute Christians, they close churches, they don't give the permission to youth to go to the religious functions and to receive religious educations. And so they fear that in the future nothing will happen, or means much more that the persecution will increase.
And we can't know that until we look a few months down the line and we see what the repercussions have been. Let's talk about the timing. It's been years that we have been reporting on the fact that Beijing and the Holy See are on the verge of coming to an agreement. Now they have signed it. It's a temporary one, but they've signed something. How important is the timing? Why now? Why now? Why September 2018?
I think that it is because in the Chinese government and in the Catholic Church in the world and in China, there are many enemies of this agreement. Means that in China, above all, one part of the leadership, that one linked to the United Front, to the Patriotic Association, to the administration for the religious affairs, they don't want any agreement. And they are increasing the persecution of Christians, of Muslims, of Buddhists in this period, just to put things difficult for the Vatican to accept. So I think this is the main reason why they have done a provisional agreement in this period, because the foreign ministry and the Vatican, they fear that in the future perhaps it could be more and more difficult to sign it.
Last question, Taiwan. What happens now regarding relations between the Vatican and Taiwan?
Let us say that one positive aspect of this provisional agreement is that it is a pastoral agreement and not a political one. This means that there is no discussion about the relationship between the Vatican and Taiwan. Of course, I think that the foreign ministry has the plan in the future to try to leave the support of the Vatican to Taiwan as a diplomatic relationship. But for the time being, the relationship with Taiwan are maintained. And this is very interesting because this is, we can say, a kind of victory of the Vatican, because up to a few months ago, still the United Front, the Patriotic Association, and so on, they were saying that if the Vatican want to dialogue with China, they have to cut diplomatic relationship with the Vatican, with Taiwan. Oh. And so instead, they have started the dialogue. They have signed a small provisional agreement, but anyway, they've signed it without cutting the relationship with Taiwan.
Thank you so very much, Father Valera. Thank you.
Thank
you for joining us.
In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. Pope Francis met U2 frontman Bono at the Vatican in a private audience alongside the president of the Pontifical Foundation Scholas Occurrentes, José María del Corral. Bono is a co-founder of the One campaign, which aims to combat poverty. Now it's also a partner organization with the Pontifical Foundation Scholas.
In 1986, at the Ethiopian famine, myself and my wife Ali, we worked in a feeding station for 5 weeks, and the photographs in here, they changed my life.
The experience of Ethiopian famine was the starting point for Bono to start with his philanthropic project.
Pray for me, don't forget.
I will. I'll pray.
Right after the audience with the Pope, Bono went to the Holy See press office and talked about his conversation with Pope Francis that lasted about half an hour.
We also inevitably, having just come from Ireland, we talked about feelings about what has happened in the church, and I explained how it looks to some people like the abusers are being more protected than the victims. And you can see the pain in his face, and I felt he was sincere, and I think he's an extraordinary man for extraordinary times.
Apart from the abuse scandal, Bono and the Pope also discussed big issues, he said, such as the future of commerce and how it might serve the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Just a few days before the opening of the Synod of Bishops on Young People, Pope Francis promulgated the Apostolic Constitution Episcopalis Communio. The document consists of 27 articles and makes some changes in the structure of the Synod of Bishops. The main change is that the Pope has allowed to participate in the synodal discussion some other people who aren't consecrated as bishops. This year, for instance, a layman called Paolo Ruffini, who's the prefect of the Dicastery for Communication, is going to participate. And there'll also be a group of young people from all over the world on October 6th who will express their thoughts in front of the Pope and bishops. These changes will increase the involvement of people of God in the synodal discussion and improve dialogue between bishops and the Holy Father. The final document, with the approval of the pontiff, could also become a part of the ordinary magisterium. Faithful from around the world are waiting for the synod, and young people are excited to hear the answers to their questions. This week the Pope met with a group of French youth from the Diocese of Grenoble at the Vatican. The Holy Father answered in Italian questions posed to him in French. The conversation touched upon the themes of evangelization, the importance of listening to God and each other, and upon sexuality.
Sex, sexuality, is a gift of God. It is not taboo. It is a gift from God, a gift that the Lord gives us. It has two purposes, for loving each other and generating life. It is passion. It is passionate love. True love is passionate. When love between a man and a woman is passionate, it brings you to give your life forever. Forever. To give it with your body and soul. When God created man and woman, the Bible tells us that both are the image and likeness of God.
The main theme of the upcoming synod will be precisely the theme of vocational discernment as a gift of God for youth. A few days ago, 29-year-old Father Michael Sulzenbacher received his gift of vocation and shared with us his moment of ordination.
And it's not my work. I have done nothing to do it, but it was complete a gift of the heaven. And I feel it in the moment of the hands on my head. It was a very different thing. It's touching heaven and earth, a bit like that.
Father Michael has great expectations for the Synod on Young People and hopes it'll respond to the deepest questions young people have today. The Synod of Bishops on Youth will start on October 3rd and last all the way through until October 28th.
A few weeks ago, here at the UN Geneva, the group of governmental experts on lethal autonomous weapon systems held their meeting.
The Holy See wishes to remind that a classic foundation of legal system is the recognition of the human person as a responsible subject that could be sanctioned for his or her wrongdoing. An autonomous system has no intention. It merely implements and elaborates algorithm, but it does not possess intentions as such.
So the Holy See obviously takes interest in this expert meeting. And why is that?
Well, because this kind of meeting, the concept of expert, is not so much an expert just in scientific or technological issues about which we wouldn't have any particular expertise, but is the expertise of international humanitarian law and the expertise that dialogue with experts in warfare, experts in scientific and technological issues, in order to sort of foresee what development into this kind of fields can bring to warfare and to humanitarian law in particular.
If one delegates important decision-making powers to a machine whose behavior is unpredictable or whose field of operation is not well defined or known, the crucial action responsibility nexus would be inevitably jeopardized.
I mean, from a logical point of view, you should think that the person who programs and guides and operates that autonomous weapon is responsible for that machine's action.
This is a huge problem. So the Holy See tried to bring an ethical compass, an ethical reflection within a discussion that cannot be only technical, only scientific, or only legalistic. It is necessary to keep strong the ethical compass in order to put in perspective these other aspects.
Yeah, and we let's listen to a clip from your speech that talks exactly about that.
Yeah.
We have tackled the issue of lethal autonomous weapon systems from different perspectives: military and technological, ethical and legal, which are mutually interdependent.
So I assume that the Holy See is focusing a lot on the ethical part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, as Paul VI said at the UN when he, in the 1965, he said that the Church is expert in humanity. So, of course, the Holy See is the voice of the Catholic Church, which in the international community, and in this perspective, of course, our concern and the contribute we can make is on the ethical issues.
And I assume when you prepare these speeches, these so-called interventions, that it reflects that it is almost also a voice of the Pope himself. Isn't that the case?
Well, this is a diplomatic representation, and when we prepare any kind of speech, we request authorization from the Secretariat of State, which been, with like all the Roman Curia,
is an instrument of immediate obedience to the Holy Father. So in this sense, we really try at our best to respect and to echo the voice of the Holy Father in this sense.
So the bottom line is, though, that the Holy See supports the concept and idea to fully ban these weapons at the end of the day.
Yes, this is precisely the target that we are trying to achieve.
So when you said you're a diplomat, are you more a diplomat or a priest, or are you a transformer, like a mixed, both of it?
Well, it's like if one priest is a teacher, is more a teacher, or more a priest is a teacher of Latin or of mathematics. We exercise our priestly duty. We serve the Church in the name of Christ within this field, which is, is not very. There are not many diplomats, priests in the world. There are, but it requires a great preparation, a great humility, and a great dose of love for the Holy Father and the Holy See, and the work that the Holy Father and the Holy See are doing also in this very complex and sometimes very not well-known field, which is the multilateral diplomacy.
Pope Francis asks people always to pray for him, and in a way that includes those who help him to bring to the Forum of the United Nations his message of peace for the world. So I would encourage our viewers in the future to also include in their prayers the diplomats that work for the Holy See. It's not an easy job, but it's very important, and I think we all should include that also in our prayer when we pray for priests and the Holy Father and the Catholic Church.
In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. The Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul is the oldest cathedral in Poland. The cathedral holds the memory of the first bishop sent to the nation, Bishop Jordan, and is the burial ground of the first Catholic princes and kings of the nation. This year, the presidents of the Bishops' Conferences of Europe chose this location to convene their meeting because of the celebration of the 1050th anniversary of the First Episcopal See of Poland, the centenary of the reconstitution of the Polish nation, and the 40th anniversary of the papal election of St. John Paul II, the first Polish pope in history. The Council of Bishops' Conferences of Europe, or CCEE, represents all the episcopal conferences of the continent and even includes bishops representing nations with just one single diocese, such as the Archbishop of Luxembourg. Their annual meeting offers these bishops the opportunity to touch base in person about their ministry as well as the present and future of the Catholic Church in Europe.
We talked about solidarity, which expresses itself and is concretized in volunteering. And we have seen from a survey that we commissioned that the Catholic Church is currently the organism with the highest number of volunteers across the continent. This, for us, is not a reason for boasting, but a reason for gratitude and greater responsibility. Because we believe that volunteering is not only a service to meet so many needs, but also a way to help the person grow, to promote the human both in individual volunteers and in society, which finds a richness in voluntary service.
According to a report commissioned and presented during the meeting, more than 100 million adults participate in volunteer activities in Europe, making up 22% of the total population of the European Union. The great impact of Catholic organizations is present everywhere on this continent. European states place them on the same plane legally as other non-profits and non-governmental civil organizations. This status enables Catholic groups to do their work to the fullest.
One of the themes of our meeting this morning, to work as a volunteer, to work in solidarity, is to enrich our humanity. So it means for the volunteer coming out of himself or herself. It means meeting other people. It means beginning to understand that we grow when we cooperate. And because the lessons in humanity, they are places where the Holy Spirit is at work.
The theme of the protection of minors immediately became part of the conversation. Archbishop Charles Scicluna of Valletta, Malta, has often been entrusted by popes to investigate and deal with cases of abuses in the Church. In this regard, he was sent twice by Pope Francis to Chile to shed light on the latest crisis there.
The decision of Pope Francis, after hearing the cardinals and the Council of Cardinals, to call to Rome the heads, the presidents of the different conferences of bishops around the world, is a clear sign that the protection of minors and the prevention of abuse should be a top priority for the whole Church.
Cardinal Marc Ouellet, prefect of the Congregation of Bishops, was present at the meeting and once again expressed the necessity for faithfulness to the papacy.
We hope that from part of the bishops, and it was part of my message to the bishops, to the CCEE, to express solidarity with the Holy Father.
In the final communiqué, the European bishops remarked that the Church is in the world, but not of the world, and its goal is to have a critical conscience, namely prophecy, whereas the most decisive thing is fidelity to Jesus Christ and to the Gospel.